ran Google Map and they told me it's 52 miles and it should be right around 1 hour. It took me an hour and a half today. I'm honored to be invited to speak here, and I'm again just discovering the work of grassroots activism, because finally it's gotten to the point that I say enough is enough, and I think probably that echoes many folks here. So, give you a little background about myself, and I was born in north central China, and I always tell folks, if you look at the U.S. map, it's kind of Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where I was born. And so I grew up there, and I was a model student, and got into one of the better schools when I was 18. And then 1989, Tiananmen Square happened. So I was a freshman year at that time, and decided I had to do something, right? Because right off the bat, and I somehow all by myself, my dad was in the United States for much of my high school and middle school years. He was getting his PhD in South Carolina. And me just all by myself, and kind of attracted to the idea of liberty and freedom all by myself. So by the time I got into freshman year, it was sparked by the passing of one of the more, how do you say, open-minded leaders in China. And so people were mourning him openly, and one thing led to another, and now you have hundreds of thousands of students end up in Tiananmen Square protesting. And the school that I went to was about 80 miles east of Beijing, right on the seacoast. So taking a train ride wasn't all that hard. And so I started writing my classmates and doing everything I could going over there. Because I've always been kind of the outspoken and more political minded among my peers. So I was tasked with basically fundraising effort. And say, hey, we got 20 guys at the square. Everybody, we gotta eat lunch and dinner, right? And those boxed lunches and whatnot. So I had to travel a little bit back and forth between my college city and Beijing just to talk to people on the streets and say, can you help me with $5? Really? Because I have a buddy over there, because we buy food from cafeteria, which is usually subsidized, and when you go out onto the open market, the amount of money that our family supply us simply just wasn't enough to sustain for weeks at a time. And if I remember correctly, it was May 27th or 28th, and time has come that for me we ran out of money, frankly, had to go back for another fundraising trip. And while I was in my dorm, and the news came down that the troops started shooting at people. So the first thing that we did was we went out on the street again just to tell people the news and protest what happened. And as time went along, and kind of the more and more detail, of course, a lot of people were passing by exaggerated personal information and news, and it was really chaotic and a lot of misinformation. But that much is for sure, that people have died, students have died, and not so much so right at the square, but really through some of the major streets when the troops were trying to march into the city center. So that was one of the kind of the grimmest time in my life, if you will. I was 18 years old, and here I am under the ruling of a government that really didn't give a damn about citizens' rights or lives, for that matter. And as a result, I started really kind of busting my chops trying to find out a way to get out of there. Of course, as a college student, one of the easiest way is to get yourself educated in one of the American colleges and graduate schools. So I applied several schools, and luckily enough, I was admitted to computer science program at Vanderbilt University. So I studied over there for some time, and then just that was in Tennessee, right? Nashville, Tennessee. So believe it or not, at that time I had quite a bit of a southern drawl, and it's pretty much all gone by now. I kid you not.
So you Yangley Bob, is that it? Yangley Bob?
Pretty much.
Pickup truck.
Billy Yang.
Right. And I really, after graduation, just followed job opportunities one place to another, New Jersey, New York, and finally somehow ended up here. And
Must have been an easy adjustment, though.
right, I now realize it would have been a whole lot better if I just stuck in Tennessee. I really consider that and I always tell my kids it's my hometown USA is Nashville, Tennessee. So that's where I still have many friends and teachers and whatnot. So really, I became the path to become a naturalized citizen is pretty long, and considering that I came to the United States in 1993, and I got my green card in 2002, and then you have to wait for 5 years. In 2007, I finally became a naturalized citizen. It was an inspiring experience, and I was in Faneuil Hall, took the oath, and swore allegiance to the flag. So, a little bit of a coincidence at that time, my younger brother, who was pursuing his computer science degree at WPI, was just about finishing up his master's program, and he had a choice of whether finding jobs here or finding, going back to China. It's just so that he's a little bit older compared to the time that I started. He said, you know what, I already had an established career and everything else. Then people are extending me very nice job offers. I might just want to go back to Shanghai and work that way. I said, no problem, Matt. But before you go, we've been busy for 2 years. I really like to treat you with something, right? I thought and say, you know what? One thing that we get to do here, but you don't have a whole lot of chance to do in China is shooting. Right? I never shot any guns before. Well, speaking of which, I did shoot one time.
How about Tennessee?
Arkansas. It was in Arkansas. We can spend fun. The first summer job in graduate school, I decided to, hey, summertime, 3 months, I need to make some money to support myself. So I got myself a summer job selling books door to door. One of those annoying college students. It was a very established book publisher called Thomas Nelson. So you might, if you're reading Bible, you might come across one of their fine looking Bibles. And so it was children's reference book and Bibles. And first day, I was driving around because my territory was northwest Arkansas near Fayetteville, where Bentonville, where Walmart headquarters is.
Did somebody want to get you killed?
No kidding. I kid you not. So
I'm not either.
It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was really, the sun was really hot, and I pull up in my little car with no AC and come to this dirt driveway, and somebody was sitting on a lawn chair. Apparently had a few empty beer bottles. I said, Mister, I'm a graduate student from Vanderbilt, and I'm here to speak to parents with school-age children, because I've got something that I like to show them. And the gentleman said, oh, everybody's here is too old to have children. Even the dog is too old. But hey, where are you from? I said, I'm from China. Oh, Chinese make fine weapons, and I've got an SKS here. You want to shoot it? I said, sure. The thing was that usually Chinese students have to go through a mandatory military training, but
we were actually spared because we made such a ruckus in Tiananmen Square. We were thought, hey, those guys are not yeah, we shouldn't train them how to use guns. So by accident or by luck, and I didn't have to go through military training when I was in China. But of course, the gentleman handed me his SKS, and I had a blast. So that was my very first time shooting a gun. So fast forward a couple of years, and me and my brother, I took him over to a public ranch in Attleboro, American Firearms School, I think that's the name of it. And he couldn't hit broadside of the barn for some reason, right? And just missing all over the place. And sure enough, I was hitting bullseyes at 30 feet left and right. So, hey, I am always a clumsy sport in school, but this is my thing. Yeah, that's the time I started doing research. How do I get myself licensed? And then I realized, holy cow, what am I getting myself into? Massachusetts is really a shithole. Yeah, that's really, and here's the moment, and really when I came from China to the U.S., it was an eye-opening experience, especially now, 2007, I became a citizen. I felt like, hey, sky's the limit, this is a free country, all of that. I've always been conservative leaning, but it really wasn't until I decided to apply for a gun license and try to stay within the boundary of the laws that I realized, gee whiz, I'm really oppressed. It's supposedly a free country. So one thing led to another. Of course, I live in Canton, and the first thing that I encountered is a police chief who, we only give you a Class B license, and on top of that, it has to be sports and target restricted. I was like, what does that mean, right? And of course, I've done my research, and I kind of played dumb with the licensing officer. But nonetheless, and she told me it's the chief's policy, and nothing can be done about that. But you can come back and say a year, maybe a year and a half, if you're a good boy, and we'll consider that. Right? So, well, I mean, lo and behold, 18 months later, I did reapply and got myself ALP. So that's beside the point. And by then, I kind of became this more or less a jailhouse lawyer, just learning on my own about the Massachusetts and some of the federal gun laws. So I think really gun owners, by and large, it is probably, other than the legal profession, are the ones that probably the most educated group when it comes to Constitution, when it comes to laws, when it comes to just about personal liberty, right? And me personally, I've spoken to quite a few people that essentially had a complete left to right conversion after they became a gun owner. It's by no accident, because this is, the more that I go along, the more it becomes crystallized to me that this is really the tipping issue, right? When a politician tells you, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat, say, I do not trust you enough to have you armed, right? Then I tell him in turn, I don't trust you either. So I try not to be a single issue voter, but I would say an anti-gun politician, for me, that is a veto right off the bat, right? This is really become such an issue for me. In the past, I thought that provided that one person got one vote, and I've always proudly cast my vote in front of in my voting district. I thought that was enough, right? But more and more, I'm realizing not quite, not looking at the sheer size and weight of the other side, not look at some of the dirty tricks the other side that are willing to pull. And I realized I I need to speak out. I need to do something more than just casting my vote. This is why, in January 19th, it was kind of by accident. And, going back a few years, my first protest in China, not withstanding, it was actually 2009. There was a Tax-Day Tea Party protest as well, and I almost felt giddy at that time because 20 years from 1989, and now I'm 20 years older, and here in the Boston Commons doing the very thing that I did in my youth. It was exhilarating, and now fast forward a couple of years, and now gun issue become the front and center of this whole debate and the political movement. When someone asked for, hey, is there anybody willing to do a public speech? And I said, well, I can do it. I consider myself kind of, my profession actually is in sales, so I do presentation like this. It's kind of my daily job.
You move beyond Bible sales?
Right. Yeah, move beyond the Bible. It's something in high-tech field, right? So I said, well, maybe I can speech. I can do a speech and provide a kind of an ex-commie perspective. So it was. And
You can go to Cambridge and see the real commies.
there you go. So January 19th, it was one of the rallies in front of the State House, and I stood up there and gave my 5 minutes, and I timed it, and I realized if I print in font size 12 in this one page, I can basically finish in 5 minutes. And so the story was, it just happened that about a week ago, I was doing some business in Lexington, and I stopped by Lexington Minimum Park, and it was kind of the weight of the history was down on me, and when I thought, there is some commonality between Chairman Mao and the founding fathers of the United States, right? And Chairman Mao said, from the political power grows out of the barrel of the gun. Right? He realized how important guns were. And the founding fathers said, well, guns are really important because we need a armed citizenry to repel tyranny. And so they realized the power, the just power of the government come from consent of the government. And so that there would be a point that the consent of the governed is gone or is deteriorated to the point that people say, well, this government gotta go out. And at that time, if the government doesn't wanna go, you need something, right? You need something to give a little push. Exactly, that's the word. And that's why the Second Amendment was written into the Constitution. And I just admired the wisdom of those old white dudes. They kind of listened to place. And so now here we are. And a lot of time we hear the arguments and say, you can't fight it like helicopters, right? Like we were in the Foxborough and Hollister. But the thing is, and as I remember when I was a kid, my dad would try to listen to Voice of America and try to learn English, and my mom would be standing guard right at the door, right? Because why? Because really they teach everybody, basically they train everybody, neighbors telling on neighbors. It doesn't have to be secret police. And so my mom would, my dad would have this tube radio turned down way low, the lowest volume, and my mom would stand guard just in case somebody was eavesdropping. And that is not the society we want to live in. However, and it's not just, it doesn't come to the fight between citizenry and the standing army, right? When you have a society
and that you have police arrest people secretly at the dark, and things like that. And citizenry, when they are armed, they can fight back.
Yeah.
Right, and we saw, you know, when I read the book, the Gulag Archipelago, and the author said, what if the secret police, when they go out at night making secret arrest, right, and people just ambush them in the hallways, and pokers, kitchen knives, whatever they have in their hands. And if they simply do this, pretty quickly the body of the government, the body of the tyrants will just be broken apart, right? And when the enforcer go out at night, not knowing if they're gonna come back to a warm bed and their children and wife in the evening, they're gonna realize this is not a battle that they want to wage upon the population, right? And this is, you know, at this day and age, I'm not talking about you're fighting against Apache helicopters or things like that. However, there is still relevance, strong relevance today, that for citizens to be armed. Okay, and I see that any effort to restrict the amount of firepower that citizen can wield is simply a very fast, very slippery slope going down. Because today it's 30 round magazine, tomorrow it's 10, and pretty soon enough you're gonna end up holding a musket in your hands, right? And so the fight to stop it is now. I mean, frankly, so many times in so many years, I think gun owners, of course, back then we didn't have tools of communication that we have today. We have the 1934 NFA, we have 1968 GCA, right, and then 86 the Hughes Act, and all these that took place in the federal level, and now here we are, right, all over again. I think this is the place, this is the time to take a stand, and I'm fully willing to say, hey, if they enact the laws, and if the more convenient option is for me to run and go establish a new home in New Hampshire, so be it. But if that's not available, I'm fully willing to be non-compliant. That's all I'm gonna say, and I
Can
wanna
you
say.
speak up a little bit? The microphone didn't get you.
I got it, Jay.
Oh, you did.
Right,
On camera,
so,
too.
We're all following that.
I like to get a few questions if you happen to have any. And yes, sir.
In your early years, this love for freedom and liberty, what fed that? I mean, were there authors, were there mentors? What jump-started that whole process and nurtured it?
Well, I mean, it's when you are fed on the kind of propagandas that is so foolish to the point of ridiculous, you kind of grow a natural immunity, right?
Yeah, much like today.
Because ever since I started to read, I started reading Chinese when I was a little over 2 years old. I would read the slogans, and because that's what I had in 1972 in the height of the Cultural Revolution, right? And I started reading this, and all of a sudden, one day, I still remember, I think it was third grade, maybe fourth. As soon as you can read Chinese fluently, they start really, jam you with all the communist goodies, right?
A little red book.
Yeah, I came back home, I was so excited, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I think, we're what an awesome country we're living, right? Socialism, and eventually we're gonna upgrade to communism. So, because that's the ideal to a young kid, right? To each according to his ability, and to each according to his needs. That sounds like awesome. You just, our teacher was telling us, so because the productivity is going to be so high, and everybody just have to work, according to your likeness. And of course, if you like to work, that's great. If you don't, take days off, right? Work for an hour. That just, everybody has a good time. And so that's awesome. And I told my dad, and my dad pretty quickly put a kibosh on that. And he's a college professor, and he basically give me a few lessons. And my dad is my greatest mentor, and he's
There we go.
right. So
That's the
he's
key.
you know, the same thing I would say. One of the thing I was gonna say, and when I look at the room here, I see a lot of gray hair, and I was hoping, you know, as time goes along, get some young people involved. And because I try to teach my children, and I take them shooting, and they ask me the question, why is Obama anti-gun, right? So let me tell you about it. Yes, sir.
What do you think China feels about our country as far as the people, and what do you think they feel about our government today? Do you have any idea what?
China, normal citizens has a very kind of, how do I say, naive view of the U.S. government, right? And they get fed on a little bit of a propaganda. They think there are really the brain trust and really out to get China, and there are concerted efforts of encircling China. You know, when you look at the U.S. base around China, kind of you get that impression. You have Guam, you have Afghanistan, and now we're talking about renewing some naval base in Vietnam. So the circle is half complete.
I think we'd give Afghanistan to the Chinese in a minute.
And,
Obama thought that was part of the United States. What
Right.
do you mean? There's 57
57
states.
states.
Genghis Khan didn't have a good luck in
Right.
Afghanistan either.
Yeah, and you know the picture here is I think a lot of things in the public view of United States have kind of deteriorated over the last decade or so. And before this, it was extremely positive, especially during my youth when I was in college. And the U.S. was viewed as a beacon of freedom and liberty, and it was something that everybody looked up to. Especially the United States was considered an ally in World War II, and really it was those atomic bombs that saved China a lot of trouble. Right? So Chinese people really appreciate that. And there's actually a lot of very heartwarming stories about the Doolittle raid pilots that landed in eastern seaboard in China, and they were saved by the villagers and things like that. Chinese people remember that. We're people with a long history, and we have long memories.
Remember the rape of Nanking too?
Yes.
By the Japanese.
Absolutely. But really, the public opinion kind of went down a little bit, and really after the American established a solid reputation of World Cup, right? So this is why when I think about where this country is going, where we need to do it, really, I mean, we just need to mind our own business. And when I was working at a law firm when the second Gulf War was about to break out, and it was the discussion of WMD and the whole 9 yards. So one of my coworkers, my former boss, he's a solid conservative. He came to me and said, "Hey, Jan, what do you think? I mean, should we kick their ass or not?" Right? And I said, you know what? And I don't agree with what we're trying to do here. And under the premise of establishing freedom and democracy in the Middle East and gain a strong foothold, because I said, since when democracy and liberty can be transplanted?
That's right.
And
That's right.
any people who want to be free, they have to be willing to shed their own blood.
That's right.
That's right.
And you cannot say we'll have our boys shed their blood so that you can have freedom. That never works. That never works. I said, you know, Chinese people did so. Chinese people shed their blood in 1989, and they're motivated, right? But I've never seen anything happen in Iraq. Maybe a person here and there, but never any kind of solid. But that, you know, we're getting distracted here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You spoke at the gun rally in the comment, and you mentioned how you taught I think it was your 6-year-old or 9-year-old.
Yeah, my 6-year-old.
Did you hear the comments on the radio about that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Were you able to-
Jim Brody?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Oh, Jim Browdy, I can almost
Right.
imagine what he had to say.
Right, and it's like,
Did you-
that was horrible, so.
Yeah, he wanted your son to call 911.
Exactly, so call 911, power in the corner of the room.
Did you get a chance to respond to that? Have you?
I didn't quite bother, and really actually I was interviewed by NPR an earlier time. If you try to go to a website called thestory.org and just search my name there, and that was a Dick Gordon. He used to work at WBUR in VU campus, and he later somehow was fired or laid off, and he went to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and started his own program. And he came across my speech, the first one on January 19, and he was so interested, he gave me a half an hour time to interview me, and that was the time that I really get to, not under time pressure of 5 minutes, and rather had some time to elaborate my thoughts of why I thought today's day and age, armed citizenry is still relevant against tyranny, right? He didn't edit a whole lot of stuff, so to his credit, it was a fairly balanced interview. But he asked me, say, do you mean, Jan, that citizens can go to Walmart and buy machine guns and grenades and stuff? I said, why not? Then he kind of just didn't know what to say, right? And then
Walmart in Alabama.
Right. Then I gave him the reasons, and he didn't cut that part off. Basically, he said, "Wow, that's such an appalling answer that I didn't know what to say." But anyways,
The analogy is Switzerland, where the people have fully automatic weapons,
Mhm.
and all the men are
Right.
typically 60% of the men of the age
Yeah.
have fully automatic. They just recently, I believe, took away the ammunition at home, but
Right.
they have the weapons.
yep.
And the murder rate is like this.
It's not about the guns; it's about the nuts.
Right.
Thank you.
But there's no way constitutionally that we can get rid of the nuts.
That's true.
That's the
And
problem.
well,
We
that's
can
right.
vote them out.
Sir,
Yeah.
I
Oh, those are
would
the nuts.
argue that that is not a problem per se, because really, and if we have to violate a lot of people's constitutional rights in order for us to gain a little safety, would that be worth it?
No.
No.
Part of it is that we live in a free society, and in a free society, we understand that there will be costs, there will be tragedies associated with freedom. And on the other hand, if we do not have the freedom, if we start to say, oh, you eyes look funny, I think you belong to the nut house, right? And pretty soon, we're gonna degrade this society to the place that have no return.
I agree with you,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, every time we have any kind of a massacre at a school or anywhere
Right.
else, and obviously the guy is a little off his rocker,
Yeah.
to be polite, and that feeds on the gun issue.
True.
We don't wanna go after those people, we just wanna go after an inanimate
Right,
object.
right. And so, truth be told, if you know, of course, the media always manage to find a picture of these guys at the most opportune moment, have a picture like that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it just look like this. And the thing is, I thought about the mental issues quite a bit recently, and there are probably a large percentage of people that could get into the situation these nuts got into if they just skip 2 meds or skip their meds for 2 days, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
so, but as a free society, we cannot, unless, a very rigorous process is followed, right? And chances are, whatever mental health solution that they found, and I think to be able to catch people before the act is zip to nil. right? And the key thing here is, actually one of the point that I made in the most recent rally in Boston Commons, I feel really humbled. I know a lot of people probably have the same idea, I just happen to be honored to give this podium here. Mass shootings at schools really had not been a problem. It did not happen in regular occurrence until the federal government established gun-free school zones.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? And there's never been short of nuts, or there's never been short of guns, but when you have statutes, federal and state, to say, those are the softest targets